about food. Then second, up to 8, it is actually about well-being. Discussion is actually about goal 4 and 5, sustainable goal 4 and 5. But while this sustainable goals actually has been declared, since then actually there are reports coming up by the UNDP, and the 10th report of this kind is actually came in 2025, and the report says that the SDG have improved millions of lives. That means there is improvement in the people's lives, but current pace of change is insufficient to fully achieve all the goals by 2030. The 17 goals we are supposed to achieve by 2030, but given the pace, actually it is impossible to achieve all these goals, especially access to education, improving maternal and child health, and bridging the digital divide. So what that has been observed in that report is actually fragile and unequal, which actually I नहीं दादा दर्शन घेनी आमर साइड कते जन गेले नहीं के नहीं गिनवा नेक्स्ट टाइम 2 years later I go again I ask बोलो कते जन ट्रैक्टर गिनले आमर गारे नहीं 15 जन गिनले आमर साइड कते जन गिनछ नहीं दादा के नहीं गिनवा नेक्स्ट टाइम I go again बोलो कते जन गिनले नहीं 20 जन गिनछ आमर साइड कते जन गिनछ नहीं दादा के नहीं गिनवा. Right. Yes, Sahi, what I have given is, if you will see in a macro level, it is around 15% of the Indian population. And where the technology is actually Haralangala, not Kalalangala. Means Artata, not Hurhur or Hurhur. And your GDP actually depend upon your Kala Langala or Bhurgur technology or even better technology. Right? So the unequalness has to be actually addressed, not only in human capital, not only in physical capital, but also in human capital. So rising inequalities is a actually concern, and I was speaking about the framework. If I can trace this thing, that will be actually, I will be happy to share with my students. In economics, when we see different school of philosophy, there is a school, initial school of philosophy that come actually mercantilistic school of thought. Now the basic philosophy of the mercantilistic school of thought is actually, it is your trade, which actually engine of your growth and engine of your GDP. Right? So the why is the function of GDP is the function of your trade, gold and bullion, especially the export we are able to do. But as opposed to this school of thought, the Physiocrat school of thought has come. They said that actually you can export things if you have productive land with you. If you are producing something, then you can actually export. Right? So for Physiocrat school of thought, the GDP is actually function of land. Right? So land has been given importance, but the classical school of thought, Adam Smith and others, they said that land is barren without human touch. So what is important? important is actually your labor. So Adam Smith has given that it is actually your division of labor, specialization of labor, that is actually important. So your Y is the function of land, Y is the function of labor, but then the neoclassical school of thought has come. Now, the neoclassical school of thought, they said that, means you might have read the article of Nobel laureate Robert Solow. Now, the Solow production function is saying that your output is the function of labor and capital, right? So we are shifting from Hololangala to Kololangala. And the Kololangala is actually the pace of having Kololangala is very snail space, very slow, right? So accordingly, your GDP also, the growth of GDP also became very slow, right? Now, while this was the thing, means all these things, whether it is your land, whether it is your labor, whether it is your tractor, capital, all these things are subject to diminishing return to scale. That means diminishing return to scale. That means suppose you have brought it to the stationary state, and all the countries to the stationary state, and all the countries should have stopped there, so that it would have been easier for the other countries to actually catch up or converge there. But a new school of thought has come, and popularly actually known as endogenous growth model or AK model. Endogenous growth model or AK model. What is that? Here, actually, your Y or GDP is the function of A and K. That is why it is called AK model. What is A? A is actually the coefficient of all of your knowledge, and K is actually, it is capital as well as your, it is physical capital as well as your labor, right? From this physical capital and labor, from this physical capital and labor, whatever knowledge come up is actually that constitute A. As long as this A is Hololangala, then the space of development is actually very slow. Once this A becomes Kololangala or knowledge economy, then the space will actually, the GDP will increase. And this is where actually the human capital model actually comes. If your A comes importance, then your what happened? The question of diminishing return to scale will be no more applicable, because this F become positive. It is a positive coefficient, and this positive coefficient actually stop the diminishing return, and increasing return will come. So the earlier growth model, which were subject to diminishing return to scale, is now will have increasing return to scale, and therefore, when they are increasing return to scale, what we are saying that sustainable development growth. Actually, the sustainable development growth actually arises here. If there is actually diminishing return to scale, then what happens? The thing is that the current generation is there, sufficient is there for current generation, but there is actually uncertainty for future generation. But if there is increasing return to scale, current generation is actually having sufficient, and it is also producing for the future generation. Hence, there is actually sustainable development. There is actually sustainable development. This growth model later on actually enhanced by Romor also. But AK models comes here. Here I have given Y equal to AK, where A is a positive constant which reflects the level of technology, whether it is Hololangala or Kololangala. If Hadalangala, then in a day you can actually till maximum 1 acre of land. But if it is Kodalangala, in a day you may till even 20 acres land. Right? So the productivity increases. And K is the aggregate capital, broadly defined as physical and human capital. So, given this framework, this logical framework which we often discuss in economics, we are now think that how the A can be actually improved. How the A can be improved, that is actually important. And the goal 4 and 5 is a question that is actually concerned about A. If education is there, then A is actually becoming more and more positive. And if the gender equality is also there, then A is becoming more and more positive, and hence the Y will be actually increasing in an increasing rate. So therefore, what Madam has also highlighted in her lecture is that the knowledge-led economy is always preferred to actually the physical factor-led economy. After 1940s, actually we had development economics, while we are speaking about the dual sector economy, Lewis model, and other dual sector economy. But then, at that time, this A concept was less discussed. That is why A is important, and therefore, knowledge gap has to be reduced. The knowledge gap between the developed countries and developing countries has to be reduced. If knowledge gap found in the gender, it is even more worst for worst thing for a country, which Madam has also shown that in terms of enrollment ratio and others. But the theoretical base actually we can trace to here. So this has to be actually linked to the context of Viksit Bharat. And in Viksit Bharat actually, as there is actually these goals, 17 goals to be achieved by 2030. Similarly, in 2047, we are completing 100 year of, and during that 2047, we also want to make India a Viksit Bharat. And for which, actually, what we have to do. Now, one of the important things often people say, and for today discussion in the previous presentation, it was also discussed, is the income gap or the development gap. My students, if you have read AP Thirwal, you must have read this part, development gap. Now, the development gap refers to the income difference between rich and poor countries. It is usually measured in terms of GDP per capita differences over time. If rich countries grow faster than poor ones, the gap widens. So the convergence which we are thinking that we will be able to catch up the developed countries, the only hope is that our growth rate has to be higher than the growth rate of the developed countries. For example, we are saying that our growth rate is around 6 to 7%, and America is growing, USA is growing at 1.5 around. So this difference actually gives us the hope that we will be able to catch, we will be able to reach there. Now, this table actually having 4.19 trillion US dollar, right? And we have to reach to actually 30.51 trillion dollar. But if you will see the gap in terms of per capita GDP, Then United States is having 89.11 thousand US dollar, and India is having 2.88 thousand US dollar. So, and there is growth rate. If you see growth rate, United States is having actually 1.8 percentage growth rate, and India is having 6.2 percentage growth rate. Since, see, our market size, means in terms of madam's terminology, our market size is actually 4.19 trillion US dollar. Whereas US market size is 30.51 trillion dollar. But we expect that we will be reaching to 30.51 trillion dollar by 2047. And it is logical thinking because US is now growing only by 1.8 percentage rate. Whereas our growth rate, India growth rate is 6.2%. Right? So even if our market size is actually less, our growth rate is actually more. And we may grow even more speeder than what is given here, more faster than what is given here. So, if we will actually follow the convergence principle here, there are two scenarios we can take where actually we can grow at 6.2 percentage per year, or we may grow even less than that if that what the tariff war has come now. Tariff war has come now. The USA is imposing higher tariff. So maybe our growth rate get affected. So we may grow at 4.5%. Then, not only these two, there may be possibility that we may grow even more than 9% or 10%. So, taking this hypothetical possibility, one is actually 4.5, other one is 6.2, and other one is greater than 6.2. How many years it will take us to reach the convergence? The question I have left here for next presenter is that when actually this one actually I was trying to show you. This is the growth rate, and right side the number of years actually it may take to convert to the US income. So the big research question for all of us is that Odisha is having 1.63 lakhs and Sikkim is having 5.87 lakhs per capita NSDP. So how Odisha is going to convert to Sikkim? If it is actually because it's Odisha, we are thinking about because it's Odisha. So that is one part. Then Madam has already given this literacy rate, overall literacy rate. If you will see for developed countries, it is almost male-female 99%. But if you will see India, then it is actually taking PLFS data 2023-24. For male it is 88%, while female it is 81%. So there exists actually gender gap in terms of literacy rate. Same, these are the Indian state I have taken. And for Odisha, you will see the gender gap in literacy rate. Then in last census was there in 2011. At that time, the male literacy rate was 81.06 and female literacy rate was 64. So the gap was 17.6 percentage point, which is marginally higher than all India. The absolute percentage point itself is a question. The gap is 17.6%, and the comparative also another question. The gap in Odisha is higher than all India. This is the labor force participation rate. Now, labor force participation rate trend, if you see. Laptop is not connected. Okay. So, this was I was showing actually the gender gap in literacy. For Odisha, it is 81.06, and for female it is actually for male 81.06 and for female 64, and the gap is 17.6. Similarly, for India, if you take the census data at the bottom, for male 82.1 and for female 65.5, and the gap is actually 60.6. If we take the overall population and see the labor market dimension, then you can see there is a thing to be happy, but not very elated, but happy. What is that? No, over a period of time, the female labor force participation rate has increases in 2017-18, 15.8 to 27.1. So, okay, we are backward, but we are improving. So that is a thing to be actually happy. But otherwise, if we see that much below than even 50%. Male labor force participation is higher than that. Gap is there. That gap is there. But the female labor. No, this is the for male and this is for female. We'll get into that. What you are saying. Then actually it is the regular salaried wage worker on income level. So if you see that this column you see up to 10,000 for male over a period of time, which is actually declining from almost 50% to 40%. There is 10% point declining. That implies that male regular salary, they are going to have more and more income. और 10,000 से नीचे वाला में वो लोग नहीं रहते हैं, वो शिफ्ट कर रहे हैं higher level में. It is going on increasing. Whereas in case of female, actually it is still majority of the female workforce here. The majority of the female workforce are earning less than 10,000. The final one is gender gap, because I know the one more presenter is there. And this is the formula how I have calculated the gender gap. What is that? Mean wage of female minus mean wage of male divided by mean wages of male into 100. This is the standard formula by ILO. So, if you take this, you please see the last one, because all others are not making any significant. This is a index I have taken. All others are not showing any significant. I am showing the female higher education. This one. Now, if you take female higher education of young people 15 to 29, then it has shown a increase. The index has shown a increase from 100 to 130. Whereas if you take overall, it is not showing that increase. Why so? It might be the case that overall is the other generation, old generation, and the 15 to 29 is the young generation. For young generation, actually the salary and wages has increases because their education is also more. For old generation, it may not be. And that is why when you take 15 to 29 age group, then it is actually the index is becoming significant. At least it is visible. Whereas if you take overall, it is actually not visible. Something has been said, if it is higher education, then the gender gap is actually declined. And it is so much so that in 2021-22, it was actually almost equal. But if you take overall, that is still persisting. So, I would say that two things I would say. One is that education must be emphasized and female education must be emphasized. But while I was doing the analysis of income part, is in India, Sikkim, Goa, Delhi, Karnataka, these are the states which are having actually higher per capita income. And for them, the prime mover is actually the service sector. I wish private medical college in Jharsuguda. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So by the time the slide opens, let me give an introduction to SDG. ପିଲାମାନଙ୍କୁ ଭୋକ ହେବାଣି ମୁଁ ଜାଣିପାରୁଛି। ପିଲା ଭୋକ ହେଲାଣି ନା? ଭଲ ମତେ ଲାଗୁଛି ଅତ୍ୟାଚାର ହେଉଛି ତାଙ୍କ ଉପରେ। Good afternoon everyone. At the outset, let me first thank
एजुकेट हेबार कथा समस्त पीपल माने जेंडर मान करबे जेंदा इनइक्वालिटी देखा जाउछे से इनइक्वालिटी टानी देखाबार कथा आमे इक्वालिटी मेंटेन करबार कथा आ सबु आडे स्ट्रीट माने भी सफा दिवार कथा भारत में सब स्वच्छ दिवार कथा आ समस्त को रेस्पेक्ट देबार कथा इंडस्ट्री हिसाब हो समस्त पूरा होल ग्लोबली इंडिया रे गोटे दिवार कथा जेनी आमे इनाने अचीव करछु जिनिसटा गोटे आमे हमर
Okay, now give this mic to a girl. But it's your student को दिया। नहीं पुओ नहीं आवड़े झियो को दिया। कि कहबो जे विकसित भारत कहले तुमको कोन व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय विकसित भारत?
सर विकसित भारत बोलने से ये है कि फर्स्ट इट विल कम ऑन एजुकेशन एंड देन it is here we are representing the sustainable development in that case gender
acceptable go ahead
so हमें जानना है कि responsibilities on youth and students what they achieve and then how they progress about social life and जो colleges में और if we include industries we'll see progress and I will say that we must do responsibility work for our progress. Vikasit Bharat.
Okay, Thank you. No, why I asked this question, in Niger, once this question was asked, what do you mean by Viksit Bharat? And to non-economics people and male and female think differently about Viksit Bharat. Yes. So, you want to say something or I will continue?
सर विकसित भारत बेसिकली गवर्नमेंट का इनिशिएटिव है इंडिया को वर्ल्ड लेवल पे स्टेज वर्ल्ड स्टैंडर्ड पे खड़ा करने का गवर्नमेंट ने रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लिया था। अगर आप नई टर्म्स में देखिए तो विकसित भारत का मतलब फुल और को इक्वलिटी और बेटर इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी जिससे कि बिजनेस हमारे यहाँ पे अच्छे से हो सके, ट्रेड अच्छे से हो सके और बेसिकली एनवायरनमेंट अच्छा रह सके। आप इसे कह सकते हैं।
Thank you so much. I think that's good enough. The point that I wanted to draw from all of you is that, see, nobody talked about GDP, right? You have listened to three students. Nobody, and they're all economic students. No one is talking about GDP. So GDP is the culprit. No, why I'm telling this? In fact, long ago, economists or say leaders of the world realized this, that the GDP is not really development, right? And that's why you might have heard the Brundtland Commission or the World Commission on Environment and Development, and chairperson was Gro Harlem Brundtland. The committee defined the concept called sustainable development. So the definition says development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs, right? So whatever we are consuming, and assume that we all are aspiring for well-being, and your well-being is a function of the consumption that we are doing, right? And so consumption could be anything that we are consuming, and so the consumption should be non-decreasing set for the future generation. So at least this much should be available for the future generation. It's not also GDP. It could be air, water, and mineral resources, the birds, everything that you can think of. And then a lot of discussion is happening. So what should be the indicator of development? And then in say late 90s and particularly in 2000, the United Nations again came up with 8 goals, that is Millennium Development Goals, that to achieve a sustainable world, we should achieve these 8 indicators. But then we could not fulfill those 8 goals by 2015. Then we set another goal, now 17. Like the first student, he went on describing many indicators. So I asked for 1 or 2, but then he told many. So like that, now United Nations has already given 17 indicators. And many people may not even agree with those 17 indicators. That whether those 17 indicators will ensure a non-decreasing, say consumption set for the future generation. And that includes both intra-generation equity and intergenerational equity. Okay? And so that would be, say, in a nutshell about the idea of sustainable development. And here we are focusing on 2 goals. One is education and other is gender, quality education and the gender equality. And 21st century is going to be defined by basically the skill and if half of society is not matching like gender, so then we cannot really achieve a sustainable development. Okay, now coming to Odisha now, Sanjukta ma'am and Ratikan sir have already talked about international scenario, national scenario. I will bring down to Odisha because in fact I asked Tapan sir whether I should speak on tribal education or this. Then sir told, okay, you can go for this. That's why I have chosen this. Okay, so coming to Odisha, Odisha is no more a poor state. When I read in newspaper that Odisha is a daridra rajya, mate bahut dukha lage. Because Odisha is no more a poor state. Even Ratikan sir's number has to be revised. Odisha is no more coming at 23rd position. It is coming at 17th position. In per capita income terms at least. So Odisha has moved ahead. Okay, and if you compare the past, in terms of maternal mortality, we have progressed quite significantly. In case of infant mortality, we have achieved significant progress. In case of maternal mortality, we have achieved significant progress. And in case of cyclone management, we are probably the leader in the world. We have zero casualty in Odisha, but America faces 200, 300 deaths. So you can imagine the way we are handling natural calamities. In food production, Odisha used to buy food from Food Corporation of India a few decades ago. Now we are selling rice to Food Corporation of India, right? And we have got Krishi Karman award many times. Forget about the politics, but we are looking at the state, so that is reality. And poverty reduction, our poverty is almost close to the national average. We are not a very poor state. The last one, you can see 15, 16. Then coming to the GDP, we are now aiming for a $30 trillion economy, right, by 2047. And at present, all Indian economy is about $4 trillion, or in rupee terms, it's about 331 lakh crore. Remember this number. How big is India's economy? It is 331 lakh crore. And how big is Odisha's economy? Odisha's economy is about 8 lakh crore. And we have grown quite faster in past several decades. So this is the trend of gross state domestic product, and I'm going a little faster, knowing that you all are hungry. Okay, and so the major driver is industry. Coming to the sectoral composition, that 8 lakh crore of Odisha's gross state domestic product. Now earlier it used to be agriculture sector. Now it is the industry sector which is the driver. 46% of Odisha's output is coming from industry. And yes, this is the main slide that I would like to spend some time here. How has Odisha economy grown in last, say, 85 years? No, not 85, because I'm taking from 1950. I'm not taking from 1936, although I have numbers from 1936. So in the past decade, first we can focus on the last column. That in 1950s, Odisha's economy grew at 4% average, and 1960s 3.5, 70s 3.4, and 80s 5.4, 90s 6%. So that means you can say that up to 1980s or say 70s, we were growing at almost what is called Hindu rate of economic growth. That is 3.5% or 4%. And in 80s, we are growing a little faster, 5.4. In 90s, we are going to 6%. And in 2000 onwards, especially starting from 2002-3 onwards, we have grown much faster, 6.8% on an average. And from 2010 to 2023, we have slowed down a little bit, like the national average, but we still remain higher than the national average. And then coming to the sectoral growth, in the past decade, 1950s, there was negative growth, but after we constructed Hirakud Dam in this region, we achieved very fast economic growth in agriculture, 4.6% in 1960s, 70s 0.9, again there was a little bit of slowdown. It is 1.9, 90s 1.4, 2000 3.9%. And again, we have slowed down, but it is still quite higher, 3.6%. Now, industry is the major driver. In 1950s, some major investment happened, like I was telling, Hirakud Dam, Bhubaneswar, city investments, Raurkela steel plant, those things are coming up. So that's how we get 11.5% industrial growth. And then 60s slowdown, 70s 6%, 80s 6.8, and 2000 we see 11.9, almost 12% industrial growth rate. And in the next decade we have slowed down, 6.5. Service sector, again we have achieved 8.8% growth in the recent decade, like 2000, and next decade there is a little bit of slowdown. So, okay, so I I focused on the India's GDP when I was telling Odisha's GDP. So what you can see that in the recent decade, the 2000, Odisha's economy grew at 9.3%, whereas India's GDP grew at 6.8%. So Odisha has grown quite faster in the recent decade, particularly in 2000 and 2010 onwards also, we have grown faster. If you want to bring a political color to it, I can also do that. Now, if you bring a political color, people would like to take credit. So should we give credit to the former chief minister or not, right? But for that, I quote very often an article written by one of our colleagues in IIT Bhubaneswar, Dr. Sitakant Panda. And in his article, he asked this question that the economic growth rate during Navin Patnaik's regime is due to good economic policy or good luck. Now, what is your answer on this? I know the classroom will be divided. Okay? Dr. Sitakant Panda concludes it is good luck, not good policy. And I support partially, not fully. Now let me explain why good luck, not good policy. Because Dr. Sitakant Panda again explains that had it been good economic policy, the growth rate would have continued in the second phase of Navin Patnaik's regime. But the growth rate has already slowed down from 2017 onwards. Had it been after COVID, people would have said, no, it is COVID which brought down the growth rates. No. Odisha's growth rates were the highest rates from 2003 to 2017. And after 2017, the numbers have slowed down. So Sitakant Panda's argument is that had it been good policy, the same chief minister rules that should have continued. But it is not. Okay? It has already slowed down. But there is a positive story to it. Even if the growth rates have slowed down, it is still higher than the national average. So that way you can still be kind to Navin Patnaik, right? That okay, he had done this. But I still say that it is not due to any of these things. Okay? Although I don't rule out also good governance. But why, now which sector is the major driver of Odisha's economy? Look at this decomposition. Like which sector has driven the growth rate? It is industry. Industry has grown at 12%, right? Almost 11.9% in the 2000 decade, 2000 to 2010. Now, why all of a sudden industry grew at 12% when Navin Patnaik is in the power, right? People should ask this question. Is it due to good policy? The answer is again no. The answer lies somewhere else. That there was a policy shift that happened at the national level, and for which Navin Patnaik cannot take any credit. And what is that policy? For a long time, we had a policy called freight equalization policy. Because of that policy, we could transport the minerals of Odisha to anywhere in the country at same transportation cost. That means if you transport mineral from Keonjhar to Bhubaneswar, if you pay 100 rupees, you will pay the same amount if you transport it to Bombay or Chennai. That policy was called freight equalization policy. And because of this, no industrialists showed interest to come to Odisha. Very few. No, we had some industry, it's not that we did not have, but metal-based industries were very few. See, all of a sudden you see that POSCO showing interest, Mittal showing interest, Vedanta showing interest in late 90s and early 2000, right? And even the mining loot happens in early 2000. Saha Commission has said, I am not saying this. Saha Commission has pointed out that there was mining loot, and if you give credit to somebody during that regime, you should also give that blame to the person, right? That the loot happened during the person's time. Okay, so I am not again going to the politics of it. I am trying to bring the economics fact that because of the change in the economic policy, that is freight equalization policy, which was abolished in 1993, the Finance Commission recommended that freight equalization policy has imposed undue burden on the state, mineral states, because we get the pollution, but the benefit goes to somewhere else. Because you know that industrial cluster theory says that if you can link, like during the British regime, 3 presidencies had all the industries: Bombay Presidency, Calcutta Presidency, and Madras Presidency. All the industries were clustered there. And after the independence, because of the freight equalization policy, we could transport the minerals to those clusters, and very little production or value addition happened here in Odisha. Now, after 90s, we see that everyone is showing interest, not because of Navin Patnaik, because of the freight equalization policy abolition. Now, everyone is forced to come to Odisha, because otherwise, if you transport the minerals to other states, then it will be very costly. So that's why you see a mining boom. And Odisha's industry, which is contributing 46%, large part of it is metal and mining based industry. So there is nothing else. There is very little of plastic, there is very little of food processing industry, and some pharmaceutical products are also there in Odisha. So that's why we may buy the argument out of this. But yes, having said all that, I still say that Navin Patnaik had good governance. and Odisha is not a lawlessness state. It is, no, he has definitely governed well. We are not like our West Bengal neighbor, right? Look at law and order and everything. So I still give some credit. I'm not completely ruling out that he has no contribution. He has implemented all the skills of Government of India nicely, and that's why we are here. Okay. So then coming back to the story here. Now Odisha and India, if you compare the growth story, Odisha has grown much faster. Say, if you see actually two periods, 1980 to 2002 and 2003 to 2022, Odisha has grown at a higher rate, 7.1% compared to the previous decades. And India has also grown faster compared to the previous decades, but Odisha has grown much faster than India's average. Now, if this growth rate continues, where will Odisha reach by 2036? First, because we are going to celebrate 100 years, right? In 2036, that is our top priority. And okay, so here actually I should also spend some time that Odisha, in fact, on this data, there is little bit of, again, a difference, if you use different sources of data. This data I have again got it from Bureau of Statistics. And as per this data, Odisha's per capita income was equal to the national average until 1970s, early, late 60s, so 1950s and 60s, Odisha's per capita income was equal to the national average or even higher. It is higher, right? That means if national average was 100 rupees per capita income, Odisha's per capita income was either 100, 120 or 110 rupees. But the degradation of Odisha happens from 1970s onwards. Now you would ask this question, why is it so? Why Odisha could not catch up with the national average? I again link it to the politics. Why? You will see that after Odisha, say India's independence, we had Biju Patnaik, Harikrishna Mahatab, Navakrishna Chaudhary. These three chief ministers have completed full term. After that, no chief minister has completed a full term. And many times there was presidential rule in Odisha. And it continues till Janagala Patnaik comes back to power in 1980s, early 80s. So you can say that political instability probably was one of the driving factors that Odisha could not catch up with the national average, because if political leadership is lacking, then you don't get it. So then, although again Janagala Patnaik comes to power, he could not also stop this process. The deceleration continues. And it is again the hero Navin Patnaik, when he comes back to power. From 2003, it starts rising. Towards the end, you can see that per capita income is rising a little bit. And now what has happened because of this faster growth? In fact, when if you compare the Odisha's rank in per capita income among all the states, then Odisha was at 25 rank in 2004 and 5. But in 2023, Odisha's rank is 19, and if you take the recent data, it has reached 17. So we are no more among the bottom states of India. And if you classify all the states into low, medium, high, and very high income category, then Odisha is not coming among the bottom category. It is among the medium income category. In terms of per capita income. I am qualifying the statement saying that in terms of per capita income, we are in the middle income group. And if this growth momentum, so I had written this article in Hindu Business Line some time ago. Now if this growth trend continues, we just did some extra, and Odisha, if the same growth rate continues, 7.1 for India, if this growth rate continues, India and Odisha, then by 2030, Odisha's per capita income will be that of equal to national average. And by 2036, we will be at a higher level than the national average. So, Viksit Odisha is possible if this growth momentum continues. किसी का नजर ना लग जाए. So, okay, and so in terms of per capita income, we will be again higher. And by 2047, we can achieve at least a high income category state. And what are the strengths of Odisha? The demographic dividend. In fact, you will be surprised, even demographers are also surprised that how come Odisha could achieve a demographic transition so quickly. Demographic transition means in Odisha now the fertility rate growth, fertility rate is less than the replacement rate. Replacement rate is 2.1 and our fertility rate is 1.8. So ODA people are no more willing to marry, and if they marry, they don't want to have children, and if they at all have children, they think whether 1 or 1.8. So, in fact, this has also helped us in having a higher per capita income, because numerator has grown faster, GST has grown faster, and the denominator population has declined. So then your per capita income rises. Okay? So that's how both numerator and denominators have favored Odisha, and that's why per capita income is. So, and demographic dividend, when I say we have more people in the working age group, but there is a serious concern. In fact, today we are having discussion on quality education and gender parity. And if you look at the state-wise ranking of all Indian states, then Odisha comes in red color in both indicators. Our score is 39 for gender parity and 40 for quality education. That means we are not providing quality education, we are not ensuring gender equality. But again, I am also telling you that India as a whole is also not performing well on both indicators. So, that's very much critical of many of the government policies. Whether cash distribution is a good policy or educating your children is a good policy. You have to think, because money is limited. If you get cash in your hand, there will be no teachers in the school, there will be no doctors in the hospital. So it is up to us actually to choose whether cash transfer or teachers and doctors. Okay, so then we have a lot of mineral endowments. We can really achieve industrial growth, okay, and which is contributing very well. And prudent fiscal management. So our IS officers also deserve some credit because they have managed the fiscal situation very well. But although again I am very much critical because when we don't appoint doctors and teachers and give this cash transfer, I have been very critical of these policies, and I have written also in newspaper articles. So these are all good stories, but there are equal concerns, red color coming. What are the concerns? Although GDP has grown in Odisha in a much faster rate from 2003 onwards, we have failed miserably in generating employment. That's say our people migrate everywhere, right? And they work with very, very low wage. And I think, yeah, this is the table. I think we should, yes, we should focus on this table. See, I told that now industry sector contributes 45% to the state gross state domestic product. But how much it is contributing to the employment? Industry as a whole contributes 25.79 or 26% to the total employment. But that is not the full story. The full story is that industry also includes construction. If you take out construction from industry, then it is 38% that is contributing to state GSDP. But how much it is contributing to employment? Only 9%. So it is the construction sector which is employing 17%. And you know that in construction sector, the quality of employment is very, very miserable. So that means 38% of 8 lakh crore I told, that state GSDP is now confined to only 9% of the people. Right? And that 9% is also not actually distributed equally, because there will be engineers and CEO, managers who would be getting very high salary, and there will be housekeeping staff who do not get any salary. So even the 9% distribution is quite uneven, right? And here comes the real challenge in Odisha, that even though we have increased the output, the employment generation, we have failed there. And this causes maximum inequality in the state. Okay? And because if you see, the best way to distribute income in a state is to generate employment. So Subhadra, Kaliya, Baliya, Jagannath, anything, you cannot distribute money. And that is also not sustainable. The best way to distribute income is employment generation. And there we have failed with it. So we should think very seriously about it. Okay, and in terms of consumption expenditure also, we are not doing very well. And poverty, okay, we have been able to reduce. And but then, if you see the poverty concentration in Odisha, here again I will bring some very sensitive, issues. Like say recently, new chief minister has created 2 regional development council. Will it be really helpful? And my answer is no. In fact, I have written an article with my student that formation of regional development council is not going to really solve the problem. Why? Look at the concentration of poverty. the concentration of poverty is in the tribal dominated districts. So if we are dividing the state into say different groups, it is not east versus west or coastal versus non-coastal. It is tribal versus non-tribal. Wherever there are tribal majority people, those districts are lagging behind. So if at all we want to really have equality in the state, then have something called, in Niti Aayog we have something called aspirational block program, right? So we can have a aspirational block development council. That means you keep target. If any block in any district, anywhere it could be, find out those districts and do proper monitoring. Why? And there should be more transfer of government benefits. Why government benefits should be concentrated in a few pockets? So I am against that also. It's not that one government scheme comes and you implement it only at one place. No, it has to be distributed. So find out. So look at the development gap. Wherever there is a development gap, you try to transfer those benefits. Let's say you see now which district Malkangiri is the poorest. Puri has the least amount of poverty. So Malkangiri, Rayagada, Koraput, Nabarangpur, Mayurbhanj, and Gajapati, Keonjhar, all these districts are tribal districts, and most of them are scheduled districts, right? So if at all we want to have equality in the state, let us have something called aspirational development council, and that should be monitored at a high level and a very regular interval, and then we can have probably a better poverty alleviation. So I conclude my story with this, that okay, there is a good part that if the present growth momentum continues in Odisha, Odisha has the potential to become a developed state. But there are serious concerns in employment generation and distribution income and distribution of the growth benefits to all regions. So we should think about it. Okay? Then only we can become a Viksit Bharat or Viksit Odisha. Otherwise, Viksit Bharat with higher GSDP will not really mean anything. With that, I conclude. Thank you. That's why Jharsuguda generates Rathika Sarvasling, which is the finance capital of present. Who has ruled Odisha? It is Patnaik dynasty which has ruled 45 years. Sorry, I am not making any caste but that is fact. Like in history writes, Ganga dynasty ruled, and this dynasty ruled. It is Patnaik dynasty. It took so many years to get a tribal chief minister, right? That represents 24% of the population, right? And that also you see a lot of mockery, right? People make a lot of mockery. For the first time he has become a chief minister, people should be kind. Let him at least get some time to do something, right? And why am I saying this? People are myopic. So like male cannot see what female think, right? Now I have a daughter, I think better as a part my daughter. No, my daughter is very small, but male and female think very differently. Similarly, a tribal and a non-tribal think very different. And why I am again saying this? I have extensively visited the mining regions. I have extensively visited the tribal hamlets. Tribal hamlets have not been provided with electricity and drinking water. I will just take one example of say mining story. I will not name the company. I was involved in an environmental impact assessment of the mining company of Odisha. I saw that the mining which is operating in the hilltop has got all the clearances for provision of electricity, drinking water and everything in 1960s. But the village residing just down the hill did not get any permission, environmental clearance to get electricity and drinking water as late as 2020. Why? Who is to be blamed? Is it not governance failure? That if you could give environmental clearance for electricity and drinking water provision on the hilltop, why the tribals residing on the bottom of the hill did not get the clearance for the same thing? So this is policy failure, right? And we have majorly failed. So I think there is an impact because I was involved in some mining project assessment also in Sundargarh district. I came to Sundargarh district a few years ago. I used to tell the collector of Keonjhar district and Sundargarh district that you have so much of money under district mineral fund. Why don't you identify all the tribal hamlets and just connect them with good roads? In fact, I also had a meeting with all the line department officers. I asked this question to all the PWD, Public Works Department engineers. Why are you not submitting proposals to the collector? He has a lot of money, he can give you roads. Then they said, we would never submit a proposal. I don't know why. This is a crime. That we are not even submitting proposal to construct a road to the tribal hamlets. They said, sir, if you submit the proposal, then under environmental clearance for 5 years, will not get approval. then I will be blamed as the most inefficient engineer because I cannot utilize the funds. So better not to submit a proposal and connect the village. No, wherever there is no good road, you just spend money there. Ignore all the. Is it not a crime? And that's why I wrote an article in the newspaper after this discussion. I wrote that ओडिया में लिखते से जंगल सुरक्षा बोझ आदिवासी ऊपर. So they will protect all the forests and you will not give them roads and electricity and drinking water, right? Is it not a crime? Is it not a failure of the state? So that's it. So we have to come out of it and we have to think very clearly that what should we do for the development of all regions. Okay, here I am specifying one particular community because that community has been deprived. I am not telling any regional story here because I told you that the divide is between tribals versus non-tribals. It's not between any regions, right? So focus those regions and even go to that block level, not even district. I am not favor of districts. Go to identify out of 314 blocks which blocks are the most deprived blocks and focus. Chief Minister should make a visit, all ministers should make a visit, track like Prime Minister is tracking actually of the aspirational block programs. Chief Minister should track. And even I would say that as citizen of this state, what are we demanding? Have you ever seen a protest in our state saying that upon teachers, upon doctors? No protest has ever happened in the state. We are happy with 5,000 rupees. Then what else we want? Nothing can be done. Self-sufficient, right? Like paddy products. Once upon a time, we used to buy rice from Food Corporation of India. Now we are a net seller of paddy to Food Corporation of India. But there is also a problem to it. The diversity of the crop has declined. In fact, if anybody has written the article written by Professor Nilakant Kharapka, the great economist, Dandekar poverty estimate you might have heard, he had written a few months ago, very interesting article. He had compared the agricultural output in 1980s and present. So we have sacrificed all other crops and we have gone for a monoculture that is only paddy. Our millets, varieties of millets have gone, varieties of pulses have gone, okay, and even varieties of vegetables have gone. We are only getting a few vegetables and only paddy. So that is a matter of concern. But at least there are some good stories that we have produced enough of paddy, and that's why we have self-sufficiency. So there is some amount of growth because of say use of HYV and some irrigation facilities have been provided, and that's why we have achieved this growth. I think you should.
Thank you everyone for patient hearing. I must thank both the presenters, Professor R.K. Kumbar and Dr. Amrendra Das, for their nice deliberation. And I also thank all the participants who have passively and who have actively participated in the program. I thank them all. Only one line I want to add. That is regarding Dr. Amrendra Sir's presentation, when he was saying that he will be stopping all the private schools, colleges and education. I think I can say instead of doing that, we should give them choice. But one thing we can do, reservation for the government and school children, government educated, in class 10 government educated students. If we can keep some reservation, situation may change. This is my submission. Regarding R.K. Sir's presentation, I want to add that is adding. He had shown some index where that youth population's male-female earning is improving. He has shown that is the age group of 15 to 29. My hunch is after 29, that is 30 to 40 age group population, if we take into consideration, female earning will be low because marriage, childbearing, that where we find the societal that is control or influence will reduce the female earning. So there is a need to look into that matter. Anyway, it is there. So we should come to a close, and everybody is hungry. So I think we should close here. Thank you everybody, and I should thank the organizers to give me the chance to even chair the session. Thank you.
थैंक यू मैडम मु वर्तमान आमर कीनोट एड्रेस सेशन जो चली आमर विशिष्ट रिसोर्स पर्सन्स मानक सम्मानित करने मु पतितपावन साहू सार को मंच को आसवा अनुरोध करी पंचायत बरगढ़ पंचायत कॉलेज रिटायर्ड प्रिंसिपल से आमर स्पीकर मानक सम्मानित करेंगे
समस्त को धन्यवाद समस्त भोजन व्यवस्था कराई अनुरोध करी समस्त को अतिथि अभ्यागत जो मैंने चार्ज अच्छा जो मैंने गेस्ट अच्छा आईक्यूएस ने बाकी जो मैंने सार अच्छा